the year is 1987, 1988. By this time, Public Enemy, I think they had released their album. All I know is that during the school year, 1987, 1988, about half of the school year, the song Rebel Without a Pause. This song just had like the whole school enthralled. Like we were all just during the breaks out in the hall, like the 3-minute break before you have to go to class. Like you can walk by any given crew and they're singing Rebel Without a Pause. So Chuck was coming through with the crazy, crazy, mad just voice that grabs you and raps you and takes you to another place as far as an MC. And then another crazy thing about Rebel Without a Pause was that the track was so refreshing and just so new, and it was like you could dance to it, and it was just a really, really crazy track. So this is kind of what put Public Enemy on the map, because their first album, now this first album of theirs called Yo Bum Rush the Show, it had the song called My 98 Oldsmobile, which I don't think that was the title of the song at all, but that was a crazy song. My 98 Oldsmobile's like, my 98 Oldsmobile's like to spine. And then you get into Public Enemy #1. It's like, not Public Enemy #1, but there's a song where Flavor comes on. He's like, yo, Chuck, we got some non-believers out there. And I think this was Public Enemy #1. It's like, yo, we got to do something about that, man. Yo, we got to show these people what time it is. And then Chuck comes in like, yeah. And then this crazy track just comes in, which is, it's really just the beat and a crazy like saxophone just intertwined within the track, and some scratching by the DJ, and Chuck going off with this crazy, wild, deep voice, going off with his lyrics. He's like, sometimes he's not even rhyming. He actually says on the third verse, I'm going to do a style without rhyming. And he goes into this pattern where he does this style without even rhyming, and it still came off dope, as far as the hip hop record is concerned. And then there was the other record. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, step back, give the track, give the brother some room. You got the room. I don't know these lyrics, but you get, if you hear the melody, you know the songs that I'm talking about. So that album really only had about 3 tracks on it. And then another thing about that album is that I learned later on in history is that the song Public Enemy #1, Chuck Chillout, who was a well-known DJ in New York at the time that they were releasing this record, he totally dissed the record on radio. When you listen to their second album, It Takes a Nations of Millions to Hold Us Back, they start one of their records, and you hear this like, I promise you, no more music by these suckers. No more music by these suckers. Like, one, no more music by these suckers. No more music by these suckers. So Chuck Chillout, Chuck Chillout actually said that about their record. So their reputation was like on the down spiral. But somehow they came back with Rebel Without a Pause. So this record was just, like I said, it was crazy. And every morning at the lunch tables, before we would have to wait to go up to class, everybody's gathered around the lunchroom, like my little crew, or the crew that I was chilling with at the time. I was chilling with a crew of like 11th graders, and I was in the 9th grade at the time. I was with my cousin and his crew that he grew up with in school. So they used to all sing this record, and they just loved this record. And every time we went to parties on the weekends after the football games, this record would play. And that was another record that gets the party going. You throw on Rebel Without a Pause, you get the party started for real. The party's going down, everybody's sitting around, throwing Rebel Without a Pause, the party is getting started. So that was a real influential record within the hip hop world at the time that really brought, Public Enemy back from drowning, because they were drowning, in the bigger picture of it all. They weren't drowning to me, because actually on their album, like I said, they had like about 4 dope songs. They had about 4 whack songs. So out of 8 songs, half and half, you could still stay afloat with the hip hop career with half of your album good and half of your album bad. So, but and then their next album, which we're not going to get into here, was really crazy. Okay, we will get into that. So, like I said, the school year 1987, 1988. Comes summer 1988, after Rebel Without a Pause, comes bass. How low can you go? Therefore, Bring the Noise. So Bring the Noise comes after that single. Now, Bring the Noise was a single to introduce their album. I think that single had dropped around the spring 1988. Now, when we get to the summer of 1988, they dropped their album called It Takes the Nations of Millions to Hold Us Back. And so, yeah, Bring the Noise was actually a single on a movie soundtrack or something like that. So then they drop a single called Don't Believe the Hype in the summer of 88 to introduce their album. Now, when this album drops, once again, and like I said, we're talking about the Midwest here. We're talking about Ohio. Back in like the year of 2000, you go to Ohio, like you wouldn't really hear any East Coast hip hop out there. So this is 1988. They dropped this album, and once again, this is like the year of the drug dealer. This is the year the drug dealers are getting money. This is the year that drug dealers are rolling around the hood in their souped up cars with the rims, with the loud systems, and their Jeep Suzukis and their their Jeep Wranglers and whatever kind of Jeep, because Jeeps were the hype thing to drive back then. And a couple of dudes who wanted to be big shots in Ohio, they have their BMWs, and maybe one cat had a Benz. But this album was all you heard pumping in the hood. You're driving by, you either hear Don't Believe the Hype, or you hear some other record from that album. You hear the chaos and the chaos in the Hour of Steel. That was a crazy record. Just the way he came in talking about, I got a letter from the government. You know, my mom always told me I wasn't going to the service, so I could feel this record. And then around that time, you had a couple of my friends talking about they would never ever go to the service. The service is the government. They just use you and abuse you. And so I understood where he was coming from. He's talking about, I got a letter from the government the other day. I opened and read it. It said they were suckers. They wanted me for their army or whatever. I said, picture me giving a damn fuck that. Never. So he's like, I'm never getting drafted. I'm never going into the army. And then he goes into the crust of the record and gets into it, and that was a crazy record off of that album. That album was basically bananas all throughout. It was just a crazy album. You had the buffoonery song of Flavor Flav even came off because the album was so live and the production was just so, you know, refreshing and new and just something crazy for your ears to hear and experience as far as listening to a hip hop record. Even his album where he's freestyling and basically saying nothing at all. He's not even really rhyming maybe even half of the time, or maybe he's rhyming but he's not making any type of sense whatsoever. Even this record came off. And then, you know, that album, as is noted, is one of the greatest albums in hip hop to ever be released and to ever come out. That has to be. If you say, what is the greatest hip hop album ever, that has to be number one. It is number one. You know, if you don't think so, I guess you can have a different opinion, but you would have to have a hell of a hard time explaining that opinion to a lot of people. And then to backtrack on something else, what we were talking about, like I said, the Paid in Full song by Eric B. and Rakim. If you don't know those lyrics to that song, which was just this crazy short, it was crazy live, it was crazy short, so the song had you when you were hearing it. If you don't know the lyrics to that song, like, you can't call yourself a hip hop nothing. If you don't know, you should be able to recognize that song from just like a half of a lyric. That's Paid in Full. And also, I think if you call yourself a hip hop historian or a hip hop anything, you should just know those lyrics because, first of all, the song was live, it was crazy short, and it's just a memorable song. So when they're throwing that on the old school session of the party, if you're not singing, you know, you can't tell me shit about hip hop.